Hello friends, today we are going to study about the reproduction in lower and higher animals. In that we are going to study about the female reproductive system. Now let's see. This female reproductive system consists of a pair of ovaries, a pair of oviducts, uterus, vagina, external genitalia, a pair of vestibular glands and a pair of mammary glands. See this diagram. In this diagram we will understand the ovary, uterus, vagina, fallopian tube. Now let's see about the ovary. It is a primary female sex organ. The main function of this ovary, it is nothing but the production of egg or ovum and the female reproductive system hormones. Here the shape of the ovary, it is solid, oval or almond shape, and the size is approximately 3.0 cm in length, 1.5 cm in breadth and 1.0 cm in thickness. Now let's see about the location. This ovary is located in the upper lateral part of the pelvis near the kidneys. Each ovary is held in position by ligament by attaching to the uterus and abdominal wall. These ligaments are formed by the fold of peritoneum. It holds the ovary, oviduct and uterus to dorsal body part. Here the ovarian ligament attaches ovary to uterus. See that diagram. In the diagram it is given in detail where are the ovaries are located, how they are attached to the uterus and how they are attached to the peritoneum. Now see the functions of ovary. Two functions are there, that is a production of egg or the ovum, second one production of hormone, for example estrogen, progesterone, relaxin, activin and inhibin. Now let's see about the structure and development of ovary. See the diagram. It is the compact structure differentiated into the central part called as the medulla and the outer part called as the cortex. The cortex is covered externally by the layer of germinal epithelium, and at the center the stroma or loose connective tissue of the medulla has blood vessel, lymph vessel and nerve vessel. Now this structure of ovary, in that the outer cortex is more compact and granular. It shows large number of tiny masses of cells called as the ovarian follicles. These are collectively formed from the immature ova originating from cells of the dorsal endoderm of the yolk sac. The cells migrate to the gonadal ridge during the embryonic development and divide mitotically. These cells are called as the oogonia. In these, the cells of germinal epithelium give rise to oogonia that projecting into the cortex in the form of cords called as the egg tube or the Pfeiffer cells. Each cord at its end has a round mass of oogonal cell called as the egg nest from which primordial follicle develops. This is the primordial follicle. In this primordial follicle, the structure of primordial follicle, if we have seen, in this the outermost flat cells are present, the flat follicular cells are present, and at the center a large primary oocyte is present. This is the primordial follicle, and this primordial follicle which is formed from the endodermal cells, that outermost, that germinal epithelial cells. In this, the primary oocytes start with its meiotic division but get arrested at meiosis 1 of the 2 million primordial follicles embedded in the fetal ovary. Only about 1 million remains at birth and only about 40,000 remain at the time of puberty. On the large scale destruction of the primordial follicle during growth, it is called as the atresia. See this, I have given here, this atresia is there, that means destruction of primordial follicle during growth. this primordial follicle which mature, or it is also this primordial follicle get converts into the mature follicle or the Graafian follicle. And here in this primordial follicle, during each menstrual cycle, only one primordial follicle starts growing into the Graafian follicle. Means in each cycle only one follicle get matures, and in each cycle one of two ovaries produces Graafian follicle, that means mature follicle. Now here the first menstrual cycle, whenever it is start in female, so that time that condition it is known as the menarche. And menopause means what? At the age of 45 to 55 years, so this menstrual cycle stops. That is known as the menopause condition. Period between this menarche and menopause, that is known as the reproductive age of female. And if you find the difference between this menarche and menopause, so there will be the 32 years. In this time the female will be producing a maximum of about 416 eggs. Now, ovarian history of a mature female. Many changes seen in mature female. Means in this the history of ovary, we have discussed about the primary structure of ovary. The following discussion include the changes seen in a mature ovary. Here there are different stages of development of oocyte can seen, as we have already seen in the diagram. That outermost is the cortex, another one is the medulla. In that cortex region, different stages of follicles are present. Primary follicle means primordial follicle, primary follicle, secondary follicle, Graafian follicle. And each primary follicle has multi-layer cuboidal follicular cells, and these follicular cells which get mature, then when the outermost layer increases on that, and then that primordial follicle convert into the primary follicle, and then that layer again increases, it becomes the secondary follicle, and at the end it becomes the Graafian follicle. Means so it becomes a multi-layer structure. The stroma cells add theca over the follicle, and whenever it added the theca over the follicle, so then there are the changes takes place. Means then they are converting into the secondary follicle, and there is growth of the oocyte, and the granulosa cell increases in number. They start producing the hormone estrogen, and the secondary follicle grows into the Graafian follicle by addition of more and more follicular cells. As this process of maturation of follicles takes place, they begin to move towards the surface of ovary, and the Graafian follicle presses against the wall of that ovary, giving it a blister appearance, and then that egg is released from the Graafian follicle during that ovulation, and the remaining part of that follicle changes into the temporary endocrine gland called as the corpus luteum. See this. In this I have shown there are the changes takes place in the follicles, and here this follicle, primordial follicle, primary follicle, secondary follicle, and then it forms the mature follicle. That means it is known as the Graafian follicle, and this Graafian follicle releases the ova, and whenever it releases the ova, so that particular period which is known as the ovulation, and after releasing this ova, then that remaining part of Graafian follicle which becomes yellow in color, so that part, see this part, that is known as the corpus luteum. And this corpus luteum, so if fertilization does not take place, then this corpus luteum degenerated into the white scar, which is known as the corpus albicans. Like, this is about the history of this follicle. Now let's see the next one. Now the structure of this Graafian follicle. In this Graafian follicle, it is mature ovarian follicle. As generally in this oocyte is never present at the center. This oocyte is the eccentric, and these oocyte which are surrounded by the non-cellular layer of zona pellucida, and these zona pellucida secreted by the uterine membrane of this oocyte. The outermost protective and fibrous covering, it is called as the theca externa. See that, I'll show you. This outermost layer, which is known as the theca externa. Inner to that theca externa, so there is a theca interna, and these are the produces the hormone, that hormone which is known as the estrogen. Inner to the theca interna, the follicular cells form the membrana granulosa. See that, I'll show you here, the membrana granulosa. If you observe, inner to that theca interna, this membrana granulosa is present. Then from the membrana granulosa, the cell differentiated into the discus proligerus and the corona radiata cells, and then this cumulus oophorus. It is a term useful for the oocyte and surrounding this granulosa cell. See that here there is a presence of secondary oocyte, and this secondary oocyte which are surrounded by this granulosa cell. So that's why this is known as a cumulus oophorus. And here in between here there is a presence of fluid, and this fluid which is known as the antrum, and this antrum lies between the oocyte and the membrana granulosa. In between this fluid is present, so it is filled with the fluid called as the liquor folliculi. Like, this is the information was about this Graafian follicle. Now the next part of this female reproductive system, which is known as the oviduct or fallopian tube or the uterine tube. So these are the pair of muscular duct lying horizontally over the peritoneum cavity. This is, I'll show you. See, this is the fallopian tube. And here the proximal part of tube lies close to the ovary, and easily it opens into the uterus. Each tube is about 10 to 12 centimeter in length, and it is internally lined by the ciliated epithelial tissues. But these fallopian tube get divides into the three parts. One of this part which is known as the infundibulum, second part it is known as the ampulla, and the third part which is known as the isthmus. Now this infundibulum is there. This infundibulum, that is the proximal funnel-like part with an opening called as the ostium. This finger-like structure which is present, so this is known as the ostium, which are surrounded by the finger-like structure. That's why it is known as the fimbriae, and it is connected to ovary. Now why it is connected to the ovary? Because whenever this ovary releases the ova, so these ova get captured by this finger-like structure. For that purpose, that fimbriae are present. Now here, if you observe, in this the ampulla is there. Ampulla is what? This is the ampulla, and it is the middle, long and the straight part of the oviduct, and the fertilization of ovum takes place in this region only. Then the next third part is there, that is known as the isthmus. In isthmus, it is also known as a cornua. This is the distal narrow part of the duct opening into the uterus, that is known as the isthmus. So this was the next part of that ovary. Now the next thing, now the uterus. So it is commonly called as the womb. It is hollow, muscular, pear-shaped organ located above and behind the urinary bladder. The size length they have given, that is 7.5 centimeter long, 5 centimeter broad and 2.5 centimeter thick, and it can be divided into the three regions. One is known as the fundus, body and cervix. In these three regions it divides. Now let's see the parts of these uterus. Now the first part is there, so that is known as the fundus part. This is the fundus part. Then body, and then cervix. This is the cervix region. So these are the parts of this uterus. Now in these, first one, that is the fundus. It is the upper dome shaped part. Normally implantation of embryo occurs in this fundus region. Then body, it is the broad part of the uterus which gradually tapers downward. And the cervix is there. It is narrow, about 2.5 centimeter in length, and it extends into the vagina. In this, it's a passage for two openings. In these two openings are there, that is known as the internal os and the external os. Like those are the two parts, two openings are there. So here internally the uterine wall can be distinguished into the three regions. One is known as the perimetrium. See this? It is known as the perimetrium. Then there is the myometrium. Once again I will show you. See this? Perimetrium, myometrium, and this endometrium. In these three regions it is divided. That outermost is the perimetrium. Middle thick muscular structure, that is myometrium. And that inner structure, so that is endometrium. Remember this one, this myometrium is there, which is made up of thick layer of smooth muscles, and there is the vigorous contraction of these muscles causes labor during the parturition, means during the giving birth to the child. And the innermost layer, which is called as the endometrium. So this endometrium, which are the mucosal membrane, this is made up of the striated epithelium. The thickness of this layer regularly undergoes changes during the menstrual cycle, and it is richly supplied with the blood vessel and the uterine glands. These provide nourishment to the fetus, because that fetus comes and get bind here only, in this region only, in the endometrium. Now the next part is there, that is known as the uterine wall. Just now I told you na, perimetrium, myometrium, endometrium. Okay, just now I have explained. Now the next part is there, that is known as the vagina. It is tubular female copulatory organ that is approximately 7 to 9 centimeter in length, that lies between the cervix and vestibule. That vaginal wall has the inner mucosal layer, middle muscular layer, and outer adventitial layer. There are no glands, but cervical secretion of mucus is received in the vagina. This opening of vagina into vestibule, it is called as the vaginal orifice. And this opening, which is covered by the hymen, and this vagina acts as a passage for the menstrual flow as well as birth canal during the functions of this vagina. Now see that this is the external genitalia. The external genitalial organs of female includes parts external to the vagina and collectively called as the vulva. In these, the different parts are there, such as the vestibule, then labia minora, clitoris, then labia majora and mons pubis. All these are the parts of external genitalia. Now in this, the first part is there, that is known as the vestibule. So this vestibule is the median vertical depression. You can see here this median vertical depression of vulva enclosing the urethral and vaginal opening, that is known as the vestibule. Labia minora, these are the another pair of thin fold inner to the labia majora with which they merge posteriorly to form the forecheck, and while towards anterior end they converge into hood-like covering around that clitoris. In the next part of the external genitalia, which is known as the clitoris, it is the small, conical and sensitive projection lying at the anterior end of the labia minora. It has a pair of erectile tissue that is made up of corpora cavernosa, and it is homologous to the penis. That's why it is known as the pseudopenis. Then inside it, and the next part is there, that is known as the labia majora. These are a pair of fleshy folds of skin forming the boundary of vulva. See this. This is the boundary of the vulva. In this, they surround and protect the outer part of the external genitalia and encloses the urethral and vaginal opening in the vestibule. Then the next one is there, that is known as the mons pubis. It is fleshy elevation above the labia majora, and the mons pubis and the outer part of labia majora show pubic hairs. Like this is about the external genitalia. Now let's see about the accessory glands which are present in the female's body. In the female's body, different accessory glands are present, or it is known as the vestibular glands, or it is known as the Bartholin glands. It is a pair of glands homologous to the pulpourethral or the corpus glands of the male. They open into the vestibule. See that in this vestibular region here, these glands are present. See this Bartholin's gland, which are present in this region. These are the in pairs. They open into the vestibule. This is the vestibule, and inside that vestibule it opens. They open into vestibule and release a lubricating fluid, which is very important during the parturition, which is very important during the copulation. Now, one more type of glands, which are also known as modified sweat glands, that is known as the mammary glands. It is the accessory organ of female reproductive system. So for production and release of milk after parturition, it is important. The development of this mammary gland occurs at the puberty under the influence of estrogen and progesterone. This lactotropic hormone, which is also known as the LDH, it is LDH, that is lactotropic hormone or prolactin hormone, that is very important for the development of these lactiferous tubules during the pregnancy. And these mammary glands are there. These are a pair of rounded structure present in the subcutaneous tissue of the anterior thorax in the pectoral region in a female's body, that is present nearer to the second to sixth rib. And these are modified sweat glands. ducts are present here, and the lactiferous ducts are present. That is also known as a milk producing ducts. Here these alveolar glands are present that secretes the milk which is stored in the lumen of these alveoli. The alveoli, see the diagram, the alveoli open into mammary tubules, and the tubules of each lobe join to form a mammary duct. Many mammary ducts join to form a wider mammary ampulla, and which is connected to lactiferous duct. This converges towards the nipple, and located near the tip of this breast. It is surrounded by the dark brown colored circular area of the skin that is called as the areola. Like this is the about female reproductive system. Thanks you all.